Hello and welcome to Know Your Rights, the Consumer Law Cast with me, Abbas, Kazerounian, and none other than Mona Amini.
Hi, everybody.
So this week, we got a really good show for you. Let's talk about today's agenda. We are in a society where a lot of people have a lot of consumer debt. And people get in debt, and usually the people that do, it's not usually one credit card. It tends to be a medical bill, 3 or 4 credit cards, and they get themselves in a pickle where they're, where they're paying minimum payments on everything, and then it just kind of has a snowball effect because interest is building on interest and things like that.
That's right.
And so what's become a bit of a cottage industry in the last 5 years specifically is kind of, we've seen an increase in the number of what they call debt consolidation or credit repair companies.
Right, or debt relief maybe too. They go by different names.
Right.
But they all kind of have the same theme, is that they're not necessarily saying they're going to get you out of debt, but they're going to make it better for you. They're going to make it all go away. And sometimes it's really how vaguely they describe it that's the problem.
Right. And we're going to get to the problem in a minute. I just want to try and give you, like, some people say, you know what, we're going to make it easier to make the payments and eventually make it go away. Or some people that have been through this experience have really bad credit and they need better credit to buy a home or get more credit lines, buy a car, et cetera, et cetera. And some of the companies are saying, we'll make your credit better.
Right.
And the problem is that we've been seeing an increased amount of litigation around this where consumers have bought into this area and like signed up with these debt consolidation, debt credit repair companies, and got themselves in more trouble than they actually bargained for. They thought the situation was going to get better, but in fact, it got worse. Mm-hmm. So give me a couple of scenarios that you've come across that have come across your desk, Mona, because I know they have.
Right. So I think the typical scenario is somebody signs up with one of these companies and they essentially give them a list of all their debts. They enroll their accounts that they want relief with or consolidated or whatever it is, the services that this company is offering. And they're meant to pay usually some sort of a startup fee, a monthly fee, and it's all supposed to go towards this company helping them with this debt.
Right. And so, you got, a hypothetical Mr. Smith, right? Mr. Smith shows up to this credit relief, debt relief company and says, hey, I've got 5 debts and the average payment on each one is about $300, right? And so if you multiply 300 times 5, it's $1,500 monthly payments. Mm-hmm. But they've never, ever actually been late, right? What is it that you're seeing that these companies are saying to these, hypothetical Mr. Smith?
A lot of times the message from these companies is, sign up with us, don't make any more payments, give us all the documents you have from these companies. In fact, any letters you get from them, forward them to us. You don't have to do anything. Don't talk to them at all. Don't pay them at all. We're going to handle everything for you.
Well, we're going to have a whole show on the Fair Credit Reporting Act and how things affect your credit. But if somebody is only paying minimum payments, mm-hmm. but they've never been behind, because they've got high revolving balances, their credit is probably not going to be stellar. It's probably not going to be 700 plus, but it probably would be in the 600s, like 650 plus, as long as they're making the payments, right? But the minute you stop making payments, there's going to be a very, very fast deceleration or like decline in your credit score. Fair?
Yeah.
So are you telling me that these companies are they're telling you to do something that's going to hurt your credit?
Yeah. They're telling you to do something that's pretty counterintuitive and telling you to stop paying on your cards, stop communicating with your creditors or your collectors, and just pay us instead and we'll handle it for you.
And the idea being that they will try and well, hold on a minute. Why would I pay them $1,500 when I can pay my credit cards $1,500? Or are they saying pay us less money per month?
Typically, it's less money. Like you were saying, oftentimes, and this is all hypothetical, but oftentimes that person's not paying the full $1,500 a month.
You mean Mr. Smith?
Yeah, Mr. Smith.
He has a name.
Mr. Smith. He's we have a friend named Mr. Smith. He's not paying the full monthly payment every month. He's been making maybe the minimum on most of them, or doing what he can basically to get by. And this company might be asking for $300 a month, and all of a sudden
I doubt it's $300.
Let's say $500 a month, whatever it is. It's going to be
even $300.
Yeah.
Even $300. Let's say
it's usually going to be less than that full monthly payment that Mr. Smith would be accustomed to. So it makes it attractive. You say, I'll pay this company $500 a month, let's say, and they're going to take care of everything for me. They're going to make my credit better. They're going to make my debt go away.
Okay, so let's talk about this. What's happening to the accounts? So let's talk about the promises before we actually talk about what really happens.
Okay.
So they're going to say, we're going to make the debt go away.
Yeah,
Right?
that could be one of the representations. Yeah.
Are they saying your credit will get better?
They're saying the credit will get better because, there won't be open account balances anymore. It'll get paid down, or they'll somehow negotiate it
They
with
close the
credit
accounts
bureaus.
immediately?
No, not necessarily. I mean, there's a slew of scenarios, I guess, that can come up.
Let's try and create a fair environment, right?
Sure.
There are some of these companies, because some do make the representation, will make your credit better, because they're the, in quotation marks, credit repair companies.
Right.
But some of them do say your credit will take a slight dive initially, but then it will get better, right? So in all fairness, there is that caveat to it, right? But a lot of them do make that representation that you say that your credit's going to get better. So they're going to say the debt's going to go away, your credit's going to get better, you're going to have more disposable income to be able to spend it on things you want to spend.
Right.
And lastly, I think they all, because one of the questions that a lot of consumers have is, what if I get sued?
Yeah. So some of these companies are offering to take care of those lawsuits or maybe defend you in them.
Well,
hire
hold on a
an
minute. They're
attorney
not
for
law
you.
firms, though.
Oftentimes they say that they have either lawyers that maybe work with them or that they'll hire it out for you so that they can supposedly help you even if you do get sued.
What do you mean they hire them? So who's the attorney-client relationship with?
That's where it becomes tricky. I mean, it's an odd scenario where somebody basically goes and hires a law firm for you, and you might not even know about it, especially if all the communications are going directly to this credit repair organization or debt relief company.
Let's put aside the potential ethical challenges and just the practicalities of it, right? Let's put that aside. And these are all the promises that are being made. So you're going to have more money. We're going to make the debt go away. We're going to make your credit better. And if in the off chance in the process that you get sued, we'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Be it by one way or another. Now, Mr. Smith goes, oh, phenomenal. This is exactly what I need.
Yeah, it sounds like a magic pill.
It sounds like a magic pill. I'll take 5. Right?
Exactly.
So he takes his magic pill and he signs up with a hypothetical company. And what are consumers really experiencing, though? Because, it's kind of a rhetorical question. I know that, but I want you to explain it to the consumers because I think we have a bit of an epidemic here because people are seeing these advertisements on the internet, on radio, on TV, local TV channels, and it's big business.
Definitely. Look, these commercials or ads, they're preying on people that are in a vulnerable position. You have a lot of debt, it can be really overwhelming. And if somebody offers to step in and take care of everything for you and put you in a better position credit-wise, that sounds like a dream. And it's going to be something a lot of people are interested in if it means paying maybe less than you're obligated to pay right now, and somebody's going to take everything else off your credit or improve your debt or whatever.
So what are they really doing?
A lot of times, they're not doing a lot. First, they could be doing things that you could do yourself. That's one of the things.
Like what?
For example, a lot of people don't know that, if there are inaccuracies on your credit, of course, you can go ahead and send disputes out to either the creditor, the credit bureau, whoever it is that you felt is putting inaccurate information on your credit report.
And hold that thought. Hold it right there. And just so you guys know out there, we're going to have a series of shows on the Fair Credit Reporting
Right,
Act.
and I'm not going to go too deep into that.
Yeah, and you can, but we're going to go into the weeds on the Fair Credit Reporting Act. What Mona is saying is really, really important. You can educate yourself, and we're going to help you in that in our podcast series, in how to help yourselves increase your credit and really be able to dispute things. Right. And there are things that you can do yourself without getting hoodwinked by these scam artists.
Right, because it doesn't require a special letter. It doesn't require anything magical. It's really your own information that's being reported maybe inaccurately on your credit report, and you have the power to communicate with those people to try to get it updated and accurate. And a lot of times these companies offer that they'll correct inaccuracies, which is something that possibly they could do, but not something that you couldn't do for yourself, probably for free or for the price of paper and pen.
They're not the ones that are making it go away. They're
Right.
just putting in a dispute, and if it's inaccurate, and the furnisher or the credit bureau is doing what they're meant to do by law, it goes away. And like you say, if you've done the dispute yourself,
It might have happened the same.
It may have happened the same,
It might
right?
have taken a few rounds, but I mean, it's not something that, so that's one of the services anyways that they might offer.
Okay, what else do they got?
But one of the ones that, might be more misleading is that they're offering to get things off your credit. If something is meant to be on your credit or is accurate and on your credit, it's not very fair for a company to put it out there that they can delete things from your credit report or have things removed entirely from your credit report. And a lot of times this we get calls about is people saying that, this company said that they were going to wipe my credit clean, make it sparkling perfect when, you can't just make things disappear off your credit if it's accurate necessarily.
I mean, and just so we're aware, even if you're a lawyer, you can't make that representation because
Right.
even if you have a lawsuit under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you can't by law ask for the remedy of wiping something off the credit report
Right.
if it's accurate.
Right.
You can your best day at law. Now, by the way, let me drop a footnote. Do sometimes in litigation things get wiped off a credit report or a trade line as it's called in the industry? Sometimes and maybe, but it's absolutely a misleading statement for someone to say
Advertising that is.
saying, I'm going to take this off your credit report, because that just can't happen if it's accurate, right?
And so, of course, people are surprised when they've enrolled in this program and after some time, things aren't coming off their credit report that they expected to be wiped clean and, be shiny and new when, you haven't gone through any sort of procedure legally or anything that would make you think that those would come off your credit when it's accurate information. So that's one of the problems. I mean,
But sticking with your
sure.
point though, like, let's even hypothetically say that they do dispute something that is inaccurate and nothing changes. This is not a law firm. What are they going to do about it?
I think they're going through the motions and they're doing things for you. But I mean, at the end, I don't know necessarily how much power they have anything about it in terms of following up with any sort of legal claims or lawsuits, or they're strictly out there putting themselves out there as somebody who can fix your credit.
But even
even
if they did file an FCRA lawsuit because they have inside counsel or whatever,
Sure.
which again is going to be problematic because there's fee sharing issues and all that kind of stuff. But let's even hypothetically say that they can legitimately and legally file an FCRA case, which I know 99.9% of these companies do not and cannot, because they're law firms and they can't represent people in a court of law. But even if they did, any lawyer worth their salt that's an FCRA lawyer should not be charging you up front for that service, because it's a fee-driven statute, meaning that if you prevail, the defense pays for your fees. But they're charging on a monthly basis to say, I'm going to dispute something or help you with your Fair Credit Reporting Act, which most lawyers, which are more qualified people, are going to do for free for you.
Right. And that's actually kind of leads me into one of the biggest sort of red flags with these companies that are out there. And I'm not saying every company out there is necessarily doing it wrong. I'm sure there may be some out there that are on the up and up. But for the ones that are problems, they're charging these consumers who are already in a bad position credit-wise and maybe cash flow-wise, fees up front. They're asking for, maybe a down payment or a startup fee or some sort of a chunk of money up front in addition to those monthly payments. And so one of the portions of this law that we're going to get into talking about today, called the Credit Repair Organizations Act, is that these companies can't be charging up front before their money's earned. So before these companies even done anything, they're asking these consumers to pay a boatload of money sometimes, at least from that monthly perspective, a big chunk of money for something that hasn't even happened yet. And maybe sometimes it's not even super clear to the consumer what it is this company's actually going to be doing.
So is it a red flag if a credit repair company or a debt relief company is charging you money up front?
Absolutely, I think so, because there's something in the statute that actually says that you can't be charged up front for these sort of credit repair services.
So you kind of like opened up the can of worms, if you like, so I think we have the general gist of what's going on out there, right?
Yeah.
And if you think that one of the things that we've talked about, if they're charging money up front for these services, if they're maybe trying to do some legal work when they're not lawyers, when they're making you false representations about what they can or cannot do,
right.
If they're saying we're going to represent you in lawsuits if you're sued, but they don't follow through with that, all of that kind of stuff, it potentially
right.
invokes this federal statute that you said, which is the Credit Repair Organizations Act, right?
That's correct.
And in the biz, they call it CROA.
CROA. We call it CROA.
So when we talk about CROA, we're talking about the Credit Repair Organizations Act.
Yeah, it gets to be a mouthful, so sometimes one of these acronyms helps.
CROA.
Yeah.
Right.
So, so it applies to these sorts of companies that are putting themselves out there as exactly what it sounds like, credit repair organizations, a company that's going to make your credit better by enrolling with them or paying them for their service. Definitely a red flag when they're asking for money up front, and, making those sorts of false representations or maybe kind of sounds too good to be true kind of promises about what could be happening to your credit. And another thing is if you're paying a company for their service, you should really know what it is that they're promising to do for you. I mean, they may be promising you a result, but they're not necessarily saying how they're going to get you there.
Right.
And that's a big thing, is that they need to be saying what it is actually that they're going to do for you. Is it writing letters? Is it, putting you on a payment plan every month? Is it, negotiating your debt so that maybe instead of $100 a month for this creditor, you'd pay them $50 a month. They really need to put it out there what it is specifically that they're going to do for you and what it is that you're paying for. And oftentimes that's where the water gets muddy, and the consumer, because they're so hyped and excited to get into this, potentially much better credit situation, they're not necessarily clear on it, but because it sounds great, they're urged to move forward by this organization or this company.
Right. And let me put it a different way. So there's clearly a very comprehensive federal statute that covers potential violations by these type of companies. I'm a consumer, or Mr. Smith is has bought into one of these companies, and suddenly 10 months in, into his payment plan, it's not working out for him.
Yeah.
What are the kind of things that he should be looking out for to see? My first thing is just go see a consumer lawyer, and they'll give you a free consultation, and you should know, right? But if he for himself wants some triggers or some red flags, from say, well, maybe maybe these guys are violating CROA and my rights have been violated. Like, what are the kind of things apart from the money up front that he or she should, Mr. Smith, it's a he, should be looking for?
The misleading aspect of it, them misleading you about what they can do for you. A lot of it is, just about the representations this company is making. And then also, if they do tell you how they're going to get you there, they can't be, for example, saying, well, we're going to do this kind of in a backdoor way. We're going to create like a separate alias for you, or we're going to give wrong information to the credit bureaus. For example, let's say they write letters to the credit bureau saying, Mr. Smith is dead. This account needs to be closed, or something like that. I mean, obviously that's not true, and Mr. Smith is very much so alive and well.
He's a ghost.
Yeah, and that can't be the way you get things, off your credit or improving someone's credit, is doing things that are fraudulent, illegal, setting up aliases, doing things the backdoor way when, there is a very upfront way to make your credit better or remove inaccuracies and things like that, and it doesn't necessarily require paying one of these companies.
So, what remedies are available to people like Mr. Smith whose rights have been violated by these companies?
So if Mr. Smith is lucky enough to either figure it out on his own or find a consumer attorney to help him through it, is the statute actually allows for actual damages, punitive damages, and also attorney's fees and costs. So, Mr. Smith might have been duped by the credit repair organization to pay up front, but like you were saying, a lot of these consumer statutes are fee-driven, so that if somebody's in a bad situation, they don't also have to fork out money usually for a good consumer attorney that's, on the up and up, to be paying something up front to that attorney as well. The law is going to help somebody who's in this position, and they can often find an attorney that's going to be willing to take this sort of case on contingency, I guess, if you want to call it that. People are familiar with that. Where, if there is a favorable result, oftentimes the attorney can ask the court or the other side for their fees and costs that way.
And I think that's important because when Congress enacted the statute, you think about it practically, the reason why Congress went to the trouble of writing an attorney's fees provision into the statute is because they understood that the people that are going to be victims of this are in a vulnerable position and they can't afford attorneys. Because if they could afford attorneys, they probably wouldn't be in debt and hiring scam artists to try and get them out of that debt. And so it's an important recognition by Congress to say, yes, we need to protect these vulnerable people. So, and one of the ways we're going to do is create this law, and we're going to allow for attorney's fees provision so that they don't have to be out of pocket to try and get real help to get them out of this pickle that they're in. And I think the punitive damages, and for those of you that don't know what punitive damages are, I mean, punitive damages are what we call exemplary damages, meaning one of the reasons of punitive damages is to punish. And so to stop companies like that behaving that way.
Right.
And it also, if there are companies that are doing it the right way, it doesn't create an anti-competitive atmosphere because these people are getting rewarded for doing it the wrong way.
Sure.
And I think it's because it's such an egregious act, like to be able to do this to people. I think that it's important that Congress recognizes. And why do I think it's egregious? It is this. These people that throughout the country are affected by debt tend to be the most vulnerable. You're talking about students, you're talking about old people, single mothers, and you're getting a business practice here of people that are preying on the weak of our society. And that is like something that should be punished. And essentially, because of the advertising that they're putting out there and the representations that they're making and the conduct that they're like going through, essentially they're trying to replace like lawyers to a certain degree who should be doing this work, a lot of this work, should I say, on a contingency or with no money out of pocket, and with better results a lot of the time. And they're trying to, like, to a certain degree, practice law. But the most important thing is that they're picking on vulnerable people, and I find that offensive.
And really, cloaking it as trying to pull them up, and rather they're sort of pushing them further down by, putting them in a worse debt position oftentimes after they're through with this.
Well, yeah, I think that's a really good point. They're disguising themselves as consumer advocates
exactly.
when they're really no better than the creditors.
Right.
In fact, they're probably worse.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm sure that, if you stop paying this credit repair organization's company, sometimes, they might come after you for what you owe them too, who knows? So they could be on the next list of your creditors, or that's on your credit report too. So, I mean, oftentimes they're offering you something that's too good to be true, and sometimes when something sounds too good to be true, you really got to look at the fine print and what it is they're really offering you, and whether it seems like it's on the up and really fair.
Yeah. I mean, this is a really, really important issue, guys, and I'm really appreciative of Mona has kind of helped educate us, me included in all of this, because these are very, very important consumer rights, and it's designed to people that are victims of this. And like I said, most people that are victims of this are the most vulnerable of our society. So it's important that we educate each other, and if you know anybody in this situation, please tell them to see a consumer lawyer in your area as soon as possible because they need help. Do you have any closing remarks, Mona?
No. I think, just keep your eyes open, people.
Keep your eyes open, people.
Eyes
So
open.
if any of you, your family, your friends are in debt, they're with debt relief companies, credit repair companies, and they're paying money up front, they're being made all kinds of promises that these people can't fulfill. Yeah. They're trying to act as lawyers when they're not qualified to be lawyers. Then please, please, please contact a consumer lawyer in your area, and maybe he or she could be able to give you some proper advice. So once again, my pitch to you, if you've got any good ideas, you need to be educated on a certain area of consumer law, we'll certainly try and design something around it for you. Questions at knowyourrightspodcast.com. Until next time, people, keep it legal.